So hi there students, welcome back to another video. So for this particular week, for grade 7 mathematics quarter 1, so we will be talking about principal roots. Do these principal roots considered as rational or irrational? So let's find out. So for our lesson objectives, first, we will describe principal roots and tells whether they are rational or irrational. And of course, we will determine what two integers the square root of a number is. So let's define rational numbers again. So when we talk about rational numbers, so a rational number is a number that can be written in the form of a over b, where a and b are integers and b is not equal to 0. So again, pag rational numbers, they can be expressed in the form of a over b, parang fraction. And then always remember that b should not be equal to 0 because magiging undefined po. So there are types of rational numbers. First, we have the set of integers, which includes the negative integers, positive integers, and of course, 0. We also have whole numbers. So whole numbers starts with 0, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. So puro positive lang po dito, yung mga whole numbers. And then additional dito yung 0. So when we talked about natural numbers naman, in here, natural numbers are what we call counting numbers. So kapag nagka-count tayo, we start with 1. And then 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. So ang pinagkaiba lang ng whole number tsaka natural number, so hindi po kasama sa counting numbers yung 0. And then we also have fractions. So example of fractions, 1/4, negative 2 over 9, 15 over 23. So we also have perfect squares. So integers like 1, 4, 9, 16, and 25 are perfect squares. The square root of these numbers are rational numbers. So if your teacher asks you to solve for the square root of 25, so the square root of 25 is 5. Wherein, kapag in-square natin or minultiply natin yung 5 sa 5, sa sarili niya, the answer is 25. And 5 is a rational number. Likewise, 0.01, 5.76, and 36 over 121 are also perfect squares. And then, the square root of non-perfect squares are irrational numbers. Like for example, the square root of 2 is an irrational number. Okay, unlike yung square root ng 4, the square root of 4 is 2, which is a rational number. So tatandaan lang po natin kapag hindi perfect square yung mga numbers, irrational numbers po sila. So kung meron po tayong rational numbers, we also have irrational numbers. Irrational numbers are numbers that cannot be written in the form of a over v. So, kabaligtaran po ng rational numbers, irrational numbers. They cannot be written in the form of a over b na parang fractions. And then, irrational numbers are not easy to determine. So, dahil mahirap pong hanapin yung mga irrational numbers, hindi sila basta-basta na-determine. So, the discussion is limited only to principal nth roots, specifically square roots. So, iikot lang po yung discussion natin dito sa mga principal nth roots. Like, for example, yung mga square roots. So, examples of irrational numbers. So, number 1, pi, also known as pi, whose approximate value is 3.1415 and so on. So, considered siya as irrational numbers because non-repeating siya at the same time, non-terminating. So, walang umuulit na digits and then hindi rin humihinto yung mga numbers. Okay, kaya nga approximate value ng pi is 3.14 lang. So, pi cannot be written in the form of a over b. We also have e, also known as Euler's numbers or Euler's number, whose approximate value is 2.71828 and so on. So, kagaya ng pi, yung Euler's numbers din po is an irrational number. So, kasi hindi siya nasusulat as fraction in the form of a over b. And then, of course, the square root of 2, whose approximate value is 1.4142 and so on. So, irrational numbers din po yan, yung mga hindi perfect squares. We also have other non-perfect squares like square root of 3, square root of 5, etc. So, unlike yung mga perfect square like 1, 4, 9, 16, so, rational numbers po sila kapag kinuha yung square root. So, we have also principal nth roots. Any number, say A, whose nth power, wherein n is a positive integer, is B, is called the nth root of B. So, para mas maintindihan nyo yung principal nth roots na yan, so let's have examples. Like for example, number 1, 5 squared or 5 raised to the second power is equal to 25, wherein 5 is the second or square root of 25. Then we also have negative 4 squared is equal to 16. So negative 4 times negative 4, that is positive 16. So negative 4 is the second or square root of 16. And then we also have negative 7 raised to 3 or negative 7 cubed is equal to negative 343. So negative 7 is the third or cube root of negative 343. So kapag yung negative 7, minultiply natin ng 3 times. So like for example, negative 7 times negative 7, that is positive 49. So positive siya. And then we multiply again negative 7, that's the time na magiging negative ulit siya. Kaya negative 343. And then the last example, 3 raised to the fourth power is equal to 81. So 3 is the fourth root of 81. Okay, so sabihin, pag minultiply natin yung 3 4 times, the product is 81. And then kapag kinuha yung fourth root ng 81, and that is 3. So meron tayo ditong table of square roots. So 1 to 50 lang yung mga naka-prepare. So para maging guided kayo sa mga perfect squares na sinasabi ko kanina. Like for example, if I will ask you to find the square root of 729. So kapag kabisado natin yung mga square roots, madali lang po nating i-determine kung rational or irrational yung principal root. Okay, so ayan. So square root of 1, that is 1. Square root of 4, that is 2. Up to square root of 2,500, that is 50. So kapag yung mga square root ng mga principal roots na yan, okay, kinuha natin, ma-check natin na tama yung sagot kapag yung number minultiply natin sa sarili niya. Okay, like for example, square root of 289. The square root of 289 is 17. Okay, to check, we will multiply 17 by 17. So 17 times 17, that is 289. So therefore, the square root of 289 is 17. So since na-introduce ko na sa inyo yung mga perfect squares and then yung principal nth roots, so let's have activity number 1. Determine whether the following principal nth roots are rational or irrational. So again, pag rational, they can be written in the form of A over B. Kapag hindi, they are considered as irrational. So let's have example number 1, the square root of 121. So 121 is a perfect square. So kapag perfect square po, considered po sila as rational. So by the way, what is the square root of 121? That is 11. So if we multiply 11 by 11, the answer is 121. Next, the square root of 0.36 or 36 hundredths. So this is also a perfect square. So again, since this is a perfect square, rational po siya. The square root of 36 or 0.36 is 0.6. So if we multiply 0.6 to 0.6, the answer is 0.36. So let's have number 3, the square root of 43. So 43 is not a perfect square. So kapag po not perfect square, hindi siya perfect square, it means yung principal root po is irrational. Pero kahit na irrational siya, pwede natin kunin yung approximate value ng square root of 43, and that is 6.56. Okay? Next, number 4, the square root of 25 over 144. So 25 is a perfect square. Likewise, 144 is a perfect square. Therefore, our given is a perfect square. So dahil perfect square po, yung sagot po dito is rational. So what is the square root of 25 over 144? So the square root of 25 is 5. And then the square root of 144 is 12. So our answer is 5 over 12. Next, number 5, the cube root of negative 343. Okay. So since cube root ang pinag-uusapan natin dito, iisip tayo ng number na kung saan kapag minultiply natin 3 times is lilitaw negative 343. Okay, so negative 343 is a perfect cube. Okay, perfect cube po siya. So, rational po. So, ano po ang sagot sa cube root of negative 343? That is negative 7. Because, if we multiply negative 7 3 times, the answer is negative 343. Pero sa mga square root po, hindi po natin pwedeng kunin yung negative. So, positive lang po kapag mga square roots. Pero pag cube roots, pwede po yung negative. Pwede rin po sa 5th root, 7th root, basta yung index po is odd number. Kapag po even number, hindi po pwede. Next, cube root of 0.27. Okay, so kung 27 lang po siya, pwede natin sabihin na perfect cube. Pero, decimal po kasi siya. 0.27. So, not a perfect cube. So, dahil not perfect cube siya, the answer is irrational. Pero meron siyang approximate value na 0.65. Number 7, the cube root of 125. Okay, so 125 is a perfect cube. Okay, so perfect cube siya. So rational. So what is the cube root of 125? That is 5. Because if we multiply 5 to itself 3 times, so the answer is 125. Next, the fourth root of 36. Okay. So yung 36, perfect square siya, di ba? Pero ang tinatanong dito is fourth root. So yung fourth root of 36, pwede natin siyang isulat as ganito. Fourth root of 6 squared. And then, pwede natin isimplify yung 4 tsaka 2. So, magiging square root of 6 lang. However, square root of 6 is not a perfect square. So, yung fourth root of 36, not perfect square. Or not perfect fourth root. So, irrational po. So, yung fourth root of 36, ang approximate value niya is 2.45. So, what about number 9? Fifth root of 100. Okay. So, 100 is not a perfect fifth root. Okay. So, kapag fifth root po ang pinag-uusapan natin, yung mga number na minumultiply sa sarili nila 5 times. Like for example, yung 32. So, yung fifth root ng 32 is 2. It's because 2 raised to 5 is 32. So, dahil not perfect fifth root siya, irrational. However, the approximate value of fifth root of 100 is 2.51. Okay. And our last example, 6th root of 64. Okay, so yung 6th root of 64, pwede natin siyang isulat as 6th root of 2 raised to 6. Okay, ibig sabihin, yung 6th root natin, 6th root ng 64 is perfect. So, perfect sixth root. So, anong sagot natin dito? Of course, rational. So, kung perfect sixth root siya, ano ang sixth root ng 64? That is 2. It's because if we raise 2 to the 6th power, our answer is 64. So, let's have activity number 2. The following principal roots are between two integers. Find the two closest such integers. So, meron tayong given mga principal roots dito and then i-identify lang natin kung saan dalawang integers nakapagitan yung principal roots na given. So, para mas maintindihan nyo, let's have number 1. Between which two integers does square root of 29 lie? So, iisip tayo ngayon ng dalawang perfect squares na kung saan nakapaloob yung square root of 29. So, yung dalawang perfect squares na yan are 25 and 36. So, sulat lang natin, square root of 29 is less than square root of 36 but greater than square root of 25. Now, what is the square root of 25? That is 5. The square root of 36 is 6. Ibig sabihin lang po nito, yung dalawang integers na hinahanap natin na kung saan nakapaloob yung square root of 29 are 5 and 6. So, ito po yung ating final answer. Next, number 2, between which two integers does square root of 74 lie? So, kagaya ng ginawa natin kanina, mag-iisip tayo ng mga perfect squares na kung saan nakapaloob yung square root of 74. So, maganda po dito, meron po tayong listahan ng mga perfect squares o yung table of square roots na pinakita ko kanina. So, nakapagitan po yung 74 sa perfect squares na 64 and 81. So, sulat lang natin, square root of 74 is less than the square root of 81, but greater than the square root of 64. The next question, what is the square root of 64? That is 8. What about the square root of 81? That is 9. So, since consecutive integers lang naman ang hinahanap natin dito, so after ng 8, automatically, ang kasunod niya, 9. So, our answer, 8 and 9. So, hindi naman tayo malilito dito. It's because consecutive integers naman yung hinahanap natin. Ibig sabihin, nakapaloob yung square root of 74 sa 8 and 9. Okay, hindi po 64 and 81 kasi po integers po ang ating hinahanap. Number 3, between which two integers does square root of 220 lie? Okay, so pataas ng pataas yung mga numbers. So, nakapaloob po yung 220 sa perfect squares na 196 and 225. So, sulat lang natin, square root of 220 is less than the square root of 225, but greater than the square root of 196. So, mahalaga na familiar po tayo sa mga perfect squares. Kasi mas madali lang sagutan yan kapag familiar tayo. Okay, so the square root of 196 is 14. And then, the square root of 225 is, of course, 15. So, between which two integers the square root of 220 lie? So, the answer will be 14 and 15. Next, number 4. Between which two integers the square root of 500 lie? Okay. So, 500. So, nakapagitan po yung square root ng 500 sa dalawang perfect squares na 484 and 529. Okay. So, the square root of 500 is less than the square root of 529 but greater than the square root of 484. So, the square root of 484, that is 22. And then, the square root of 529 is 23. Okay. So, between which two integers does square root of 500 lie? So, our answer will be 22 and 23. So, kung doubtful po kayo sa sagot nyo, pwede nyo namang i-multiply yung mga numbers. So, like for example, 22 times 22, and then 23 times 23. Okay, so makikita nyo nasa pagitan yung 500. So, our next lesson, estimate the square root of a number to the nearest hundredths. So, ang pag-uusapan po natin dito yung mga non-perfect squares. So, kasi pag mga perfect squares na po kasi yun, madali lang po naman silang sagutin kasi yung mga sagot are rational numbers. So, kasi pag non-perfect squares po kasi, irrational po yung mga yun. So, and then, i-estimate natin to the nearest hundredths lang, 2 decimal places lang. Since, ang mga irrational numbers, wala pong katapusan yun. Okay? So, yun lang. Maraming salamat.